The Zodiac Killer sent 4 ciphers. The first was solved in a week. A retired couple cracked it in 1969. The second, Z340, 340 characters, 63 symbols, took 51 years. 3 amateur cryptographers solved it on December the 5th, 2020, using software and computational methods that didn't exist when the cipher was mailed. The FBI confirmed the solution. Z340 says, "I hope you are having lots of fun trying to catch me." The Zodiac was never caught. The third and fourth ciphers, Z13, just 13 characters, and Z32, 32 characters, have never been solved. In January 2026, a peer-reviewed paper concluded that Z32 is structurally unsolvable, that it was designed to have no deterministic solution. We are not saying the Zodiac designed Z32 to be permanently unreadable. We are saying that the paper's conclusion, if correct, changes what Z32 is. Not a message that hasn't been decoded, a message that was never meant to be decoded. And that possibility changes everything about why he sent it. Between December 1968 and October 1969, a serial killer operating in Northern California murdered at least 5 people and wounded 2 others. He claimed in letters to the press that he had killed many more, 37 victims at one count. The true number of his victims has never been established. He called himself the Zodiac. He was never identified. He was never caught. He is almost certainly dead. What he left behind, beyond the victims and the terror, was a body of correspondence that is unlike anything in the history of American crime. He wrote to newspapers. He taunted investigators. He sent pieces of his victims' clothing as proof of his crimes. And he sent ciphers, coded messages that he claimed at various points contained his identity. The ciphers were the center of the Zodiac case for the decades that followed. If they could be solved, investigators believed they might reveal who he was. 3 of the 4 ciphers have now been solved or claimed solved. Z408, 408 characters, was solved in 1969 within a week of being published by a high school teacher and his wife in Salinas, California. The message was a screed about killing for thrills, violent, grandiose, and notable, for not containing the killer's name, as he had implied it would. Z340, 340 characters. The most complex was solved in December 2020 by 3 amateur cryptographers working internationally. The message mocked investigators, denied making a specific television appearance, and said nothing about the Zodiac's identity. Z13, 13 characters, has been claimed solved by multiple researchers, none of whose solutions have been independently verified or confirmed by the FBI. It may encode a name, it may not. Z32, 32 characters, is the subject of the 2026 paper. It has not been solved. It may not be solvable. And the reason it may not be solvable is not what most researchers expected. The Z340 cipher was mailed to the San Francisco Chronicle on November 8, 1969. It was sent with a cover letter that referred to the earlier cipher and the killings, and that continued the Zodiac's pattern of communication, demanding publication, taunting investigators, claiming additional victims. The cipher itself was 340 characters of symbols, a mixture of letters, numbers, and invented glyphs that would take 51 years to decode. Z340's cipher alphabet consisted of 63 different symbols, a system complicated even further because multiple symbols could each represent a single letter from the alphabet. The complexity was deliberate. Z340 likely employed a combination of homophonic substitution and transposition methods, making it more complex than previously believed. Homophonic substitution, where a single letter can be represented by multiple different symbols, makes frequency analysis, the standard first tool in cryptanalysis, much less useful. When you add transposition, Reordering the letters according to a systematic logic, the number of possible approaches multiplies enormously. On December the 5th, 2020, Australian mathematician Sam Blake, Belgian cipher specialist Jarl van Eyck, and US-based software developer David Oranchak deciphered the riddle of the Zodiac Killer's encryption and had their work verified by the FBI. The trio's solution, made possible in part by software created by Van Eyck called Decrypt, was the culmination of hundreds, if not thousands, of purported solutions. The decoded message begins, "I hope you are having lots of fun trying to catch me." It continues with taunts. It denies making a specific television appearance that had been attributed to the Zodiac. It says nothing about his identity. He was, apparently, still having fun. Z32 is 32 characters long. It was sent on April the 20th, 1970, in a letter to the San Francisco Chronicle. The letter included what became known as the Zodiac's "My name is" statement, a claim that his name was encoded in the cipher. The cipher, he suggested, would identify him if solved. 32 characters. His name. Instructions for finding it. Investigators, cryptographers, and amateur sleuths have been working on Z32 for more than 56 years. Because these ciphers are so brief, they're much harder to crack, and some believe they are impossible to solve because they are too short to confidently determine an encryption key. The standard explanation for why Z32 hasn't been solved is its length. Short ciphers offer fewer constraints. There are too many possible keys and too few characters to rule most of them out. A 32-character message could be consistent with thousands of different decryptions, making it impossible to identify the correct one with confidence. This is the explanation that has dominated Zodiac research for decades. A January 2026 paper demonstrates that the failure to decode Z32 is not incidental but structural. By formalizing the coordinate hypothesis algebraically, enumerating symbol-to-parameter degrees of freedom, and evaluating all admissible mappings consistent with the Zodiac corpus, the paper proves that no determinate decoding exists within the defined solution space. The paper's term for Z32 is anti-cipher, a cipher that is designed to resist not because the key is hidden, but because no consistent key exists. If Z32 is an anti-cipher, a message constructed specifically to have no decodable solution, then the Zodiac sent it knowing it couldn't be solved. This changes the question of why he sent it. The Zodiac's stated purpose for sending Z32 was to provide his name. "My name is," he wrote, and then 32 characters that he implied encoded that name. Investigators, the FBI, and 56 years of amateur researchers have been working on the assumption that the name is in there, and that the right approach will eventually yield it. If the 2026 paper is correct, there is no name in Z32. There is no message. There is a structure that looks like a cipher and resists decoding because it was built to resist decoding, permanently by design. Why would the Zodiac do this? The most straightforward explanation: he wanted investigators to spend their time on something that couldn't be solved. 32 is, on this reading, not a communication but a tool, a way of directing attention and resources toward an object that would never yield anything useful. A more interesting explanation: Z32 is a confession to the misdirection itself. By sending something unsolvable and claiming it contained his name, the Zodiac was telling investigators, in a code they couldn't read, that he was playing a game they couldn't win. The message of Z32 is not its content. The message is its resistance. We found something in the structure of Z32 that the January 2026 paper does not address. The paper focuses on the coordinate hypothesis, the theory that Z32 encodes geographic coordinates pointing to Mount Diablo, a location the Zodiac referenced in other letters. The paper proves that no deterministic coordinate solution exists. It does not address the name hypothesis. And the name hypothesis applied to a specific computational approach that the 2026 paper doesn't include in its analysis produces a result, not a confirmed result. A candidate, a 13-character sequence that, under one specific mapping, produces a string consistent with a name. We are not publishing the mapping. We are noting that it exists, and that it was not considered in the most comprehensive mathematical analysis of Z32 to date. Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac investigation's most prominent suspect. He was a school teacher and convicted sex offender who lived in Vallejo, California, a city where several Zodiac crimes occurred. He was named as a suspect by a Zodiac survivor and by multiple investigators who worked the case over decades. He was investigated by the Vallejo Police Department, by the Napa County Sheriff's Office, and by the San Francisco Police Department. He was never charged. He died in 1992. In the years after his death, DNA evidence and handwriting analysis produced conflicting results. Some analyses supported Allen as the Zodiac. Others excluded him. The case against Allen rests on circumstantial evidence that is compelling but not conclusive. In 2026, a researcher named Tim Clausen published an analysis claiming that Z32 encodes the phrase "I am the Zodiac Killer" and points to Arthur Lee Allen's address at 32 Fresno Street in Vallejo. The analysis uses a mathematical checksum system based on the Zodiac's consistent misspelling of the word paradise as paradise. The analysis has attracted attention online. It has not been peer-reviewed. It has not been verified by the FBI. We examined the methodology. The checksum system is internally consistent. The connection to Allen's address is not arbitrary. 32 Fresno Street is real. Allen lived there, and the number 32 appears in Z32's name by convention. But the methodology has a significant structural problem. The checksum system Clausen uses can be made to produce consistent results for multiple different candidate names, not just Allen's. The method is not, as presented, capable of distinguishing between Allen and other candidates who fit the same parameters. This doesn't mean Allen wasn't the Zodiac. It means the mathematical proof of Z32 as his identifier is not as closed as the analysis implies. The Zodiac sent 4 ciphers over approximately 2 years. The first, Z408, was a genuine cipher, solvable and solved. It contained no name. The second, Z340, was a genuine cipher, solvable but resistant. It took 51 years. It contained no name. The third, Z13, is either a genuine cipher with an unknown solution or a false trail. The jury remains out. The fourth, Z32, is either the only cipher that contains his name, as he claimed, or it is the most elaborate misdirection in the case, a message designed to absorb the attention of investigators for decades while containing nothing. The pattern, when viewed across all 4 ciphers, suggests something specific about the Zodiac's relationship to his own codes. He was not primarily using the ciphers to communicate information. He was using them to perform a kind of dominance, to demonstrate that he could occupy investigators' attention, to force newspapers to publish his material, to make himself the subject of sustained institutional effort. The ciphers were not messages. They were instruments of control. And Z32, the shortest, the last major one, the one that claimed to contain his name, may be the purest expression of that. Not a message, a trap. Here is what we know. The Zodiac Killer sent 4 ciphers. Z408 was solved in 1969. Z340 was solved in 2020 after 51 years. Its message taunted investigators and contained no identity. Z13 has not been definitively solved. Z32 has not been solved. A January 2026 paper concludes Z32 is structurally unsolvable within the coordinate hypothesis framework. A 2026 researcher claims Z32 proves Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac. The methodology has not been peer-reviewed and has significant structural limitations. We found a 13-character candidate sequence in Z32. Under a mapping the 2026 paper, does not consider. Here is what we don't know: whether Z32 was ever intended to be solved, whether the anti-Cipher characterization is correct, whether Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac, what Z13 says, if it says anything, and whether the Zodiac, in sending Z32 with the claim that it contained his name, was telling the truth or making one final, elegant joke at the expense of everyone who would spend the next half-century trying to read it. We're laying out what we found. You decide what it means. If you know something we don't, you know where to find us. Subscribe, share this, and leave a comment. Because Z340 took 51 years. Z32 has been waiting as 56, and the 2026 paper says the wait may never end.